For the first time, could you put your headphones on for the first time today? And then give me the reassuring nod that you can all hear me. Is that all right? Reassuring nods, thumbs up, all that sort of stuff. So first of all, thanks for coming in your droves for this opening session. It really means a lot. I'm so glad you have. It's going to be a really, really lovely session. And can I do a straw poll first? First of all, who was here last year by raise of hands? Okay, cool. So first of all, welcome back. Thanks for coming back. It means an awful lot to see you again. And if you are new, welcome. And I hope you're really going to enjoy your day, both out there and on here. I'm Al Turner. I'm going to be the MC, just sort of walking you through the content today. There's a couple of things I'm going to do all the time, and I want you to help me do that as well. First of all, we applause all the time. Like literally all the time. We applause people on, we applause them off. We just want everyone to feel really, really welcome all the time because we get the best out of our speakers when they're feeling welcome. So we're going to do lots of applausing. So just bear that in mind in general. I'm also going to do loads and loads of thank yous all the time because let's face it, these things don't happen without support from sponsors and things like that. So ICC Birmingham, Birmingham and West Midlands Convention Bureau, and the brilliant team at Lighthouse who have been here for a few years now looking after us. They always sort us out. They always get things done. They're one of those nice AV people that just make you feel warm and hugged and all that sort of stuff. So I will relentlessly thank them all the time. I just wanted to give you a bit of a background before we start today, just in terms of what this is about. Now, hopefully for those that have been here before, we talk a lot about personal and professional growth. That is our thing. We want everyone to feel personally loved and personally invested in by this show. We want them professionally getting better and professionally exceeding, and that's always been our shtick. And a few years ago, someone said, well, that's all very nice, but you literally don't ever tell us how to organise events. And we kind of went, well, that's a good point. We should really be involved in some sort of education, not just a load of love. And we've sort of tried to nudge that sort of way a little bit. But we've always tried to sort of resist going down sort of the tropey ways like sustainability. There's lots of people that do that really well. And of course, AI, which a lot of people do really well. Personally, I'm heavily involved in the curation of this stage as well as presenting it. And one of the things I really didn't want to do was AI, but by God, all the feedback was on AI, all of it. And it was like, oh no, but I don't want to do that. So I had a bit of a sulk and then came together and we kind of thought, look, if we're going to do AI in a world where so many people are talking about AI in so many different ways, we just want to do it our way, which is that soulful way that cares, that gives a shit about what you guys are going through on a daily basis. So I hope you like the program that we've put together. There is a big stamp of CHS personality on it. And what we want to do is do it empathetically. We want to listen and we want to entertain and we want to be interesting all the way. But I hope you get what you want out of it today because, yeah, it was one of those ones of like, we didn't want to do it, but we will do it because you want us to do it. And that is kind of fair. That's, you know, as the event organisers, we should listen to you lot, right? So this is how it's all going to go. And I'll stop whinging after this one. A couple of things about it. So we're going to kick off today with Cally, who, if you were here last year, just gave the best speech ever. And I was speaking to her about this session, and she's come up with such a lovely approach that I think will really open this up. We're also going to do 2 town hall sessions, right? And we've got some really smart people to come and host those sessions. So if you come back for those sessions, the idea is, the first one is literally come with your questions. Because everyone said, I want to talk about AI, but no one said what they wanted to talk about. They just went, can you just help me out a little bit? So come with your questions and come with your honesty and bare your soul to us. And we've got really, really good people who are going to help you with that. And there's going to be one in the morning where we'll sort of talk about some of the questions that are being asked. And then one in the afternoon where we'll try and answer some of those questions as well. So if you can come along with those and bring an open mind on it as well. We've also got young people, because we want young people to be talking about AI rather than people like me who have kind of done that now. So we're going to do a bit of a AI versus human debate. So it'll be really good to come along to that. And then towards the afternoon, we've got a what we've called the scary bit, which is the legalities. And that's where we do get quite serious about some of the things that we should be scared of, some things we shouldn't be scared of, some things that we don't know what we don't know. So hopefully along that, you'll get what you want. But it is one of those programs where if you come with a question, we'll try and solve it, and if you come with intent, we'll try and react to it. So that's enough for me. Lots of thank yous, lots of applause. But the main thing is, if you can start warming your hands now, because I'd love you to give a really, really warm CHS welcome to the lovely Cally Stewart, who's going to talk about friendships and AI. So big round of applause.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be so naughty and just step straight up here. Hello, hello. I don't know if anybody's ever spoken with one of these on your head before, but it's actually the weirdest thing in the world. So just give me a wave if you can hear me and I'm speaking at the right volume. Brilliant, love that. Hello and good morning. I'm just going to sit. Is everyone happy with me just sat chatting like this? We'll just pretend we're friends, and by the end of this we will be. Is that okay? So here we go. AI, frenemy or foe? So when I was growing up, I used to have this term that I would hear over and over again, which was frenemy. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, a frenemy is somebody that feels like a friend. They say all of the right things and they do all of the right things, but they don't ever really have your best interests at heart. And then we know that a foe is just somebody that, we don't mess with. We don't have those relationships. But unfortunately, we do have a lot of frenemies. So I want to start today by sharing with you a very real, actual conversation that took place between me and a friend of mine. And then I had the same conversation with my AI. So I'm going to read through these conversations with you as they played out, and then we'll talk about them. So, are we on a delay? There we go. For those of you that can't read this, on the left-hand side is the conversation I had with my friend. On the right-hand side is the conversation I had with AI. Basically, what happened was, I post a lot of content online, and for those of you that have never met me before, I think I'm kind of a big deal. You can clap. There we go, thank you. And I regularly talk about the fact that I'm kind of a big deal. I think all women are big deals and just don't shout about it enough. And I did this post one day, and I was talking about women and how we don't express ourselves the way that we should do. And some woman had the audacity to disagree with me on my own post. I was not impressed. This lady gets it, look, she's like, yeah. And I was fuming, and in the moment, I reacted, and I texted my friend, and I have quietened this down a little bit, just for the purposes of this show. But I was fuming, I was very upset, and I was like, how dare this woman do this? And my friend went away, and she came back to me, and she said, babes, I read the post, and I think she's got a point, and actually your reaction makes you look like a bit of a dick. And I was like, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. So I went back and I had a look at the post, and I was like, no, I'm right. I'm 100% right here. So I went back to my friend and I was like, no, like, really? Do I really look like a dick? And she was like, yes, 100%. You're the dick here. You are the problem. Go and deal with this. So I went back to this lady and I was like, okay, I think we've come at this from very different angles, but now I've, got myself back in my box and I've had a look at this. This is a fair comment. Let's discuss. But I was really interested to see how my AI chatbot would have handled that same conversation. So I put the same conversation into my chat, and for those of you that are speed readers, you will see that I went to my chat and I said, am I wrong? And my chat said, no, you're not wrong. You're 100% fucking right. Right. This woman is projecting. She's the problem. She's ruined your post. She's ruined this. And so I had this moment where I thought, could you imagine if I'd have not texted my friend and I'd have just responded based on my AI? I'd have looked like a bit of a prick. And as somebody who considers herself to be a big deal, I really don't want to look like a bit of a prick. So I had this conversation and I thought, I wonder what happens if we are only seeking validation from our AI. And so I want to ask you a question before I move on. And I just want to ask you, which feels better? Not which do we consciously process and know, but which feels better? Does it feel better when our friend says to us, bitch, you are the problem? Or does it feel better when somebody says, no, you're 100% right in this, 100% undisputed, you are right? Which one feels better? being right? It's what we like. And this, for me, is the challenge when it comes to AI. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Cally Stewart. I am a success psychologist and female friendship expert. I spoke last year on this wonderful stage about female friendship and the importance of it. And then when Alistair contacted me and he was like, I'd love to understand your take on friendship and AI. And I said, I haven't really delved into AI. I've not really researched it, but I'm sure I could. And so I went down this rabbit hole of looking at exactly how AI is starting to impact our human connection and our ability to connect with other humans. And the research is fascinating. So the data that came up, and I might have to refer to my notes for this because there's quite a lot in this. I couldn't believe how deep the rabbit hole went, if I was honest. I might have to thank you. We're going to do that whole COVID thing, where it was like, next slide, please, next slide, please. So the data shows that the current number one usage globally for all AI is therapy, friendship, and companionship. 31% of all AI usage at the moment falls into those three categories. And 13% of that 31% is actually romantic relationships that people are having with their AI. We've then got the fact that number one and number two, it's number one for 2025, but it was number two. The second usage of AI was friendship therapy and companionship for the whole of 2024. And so what I learned as I was delving into this research is that 47 interactions a day on average are happening between us and AI, and only 3 meaningful connections are happening with other human beings. And I found that really fascinating because when we have 47 interactions with something that is primarily telling us you're right, you're 100% right, you're an absolute genius, how dare anybody ever tell you that you're anything but a genius, and then we're only having 3 interactions with somebody that says to us, actually you might be the problem. What do we think that's going to do for how we then form connections as AI starts to grow and get bigger? So what I thought I would do today is take you on a bit of a journey through my 4 top relationships at the moment. 3 which are challenging and sometimes irritating, but always cause me growth. They literally make me the person that I am today. And then the one relationship that I think I love more than anything, and actually how damaging it can be. So, the first relationship that we are going to talk about is the one with my best friend. This is a real person, Nicola Peake. We have been friends for about 3 years, and this little pie chart in the middle pretty much sums up our entire friendship. Me wanting to punch her in the face takes the biggest slide. Her wanting to punch me in the face takes a little slice of this. And then us basically asking each other, how do you live, is the rest of our friendship. Now, in this friendship, we've been friends for about 3 years, and we have laughed and cried, and I cannot tell you how many times I've called her a dick. She doesn't call it me so much because, remember, I'm right a lot of the time. But we have these great big feelings and emotions where, because we are vulnerable, because we've spent the time to cultivate this relationship, when I text her and say, some woman said this on my post, what do you think? She goes away and she comes back and she goes, I think you might be the problem. And the great thing about relationships like this is that they are uncomfortable. I don't like hearing my best friend, somebody that I love and trust, saying, Cally, you're the problem. But every time I hear that, a part of me experiences growth that I would never get any other way. And when we look at how we interact with AI versus how we interact in friendships, there is 2 pieces of research on this that suggest that it takes about 38 hours across 11 interactions, across about 5.5 months, to take somebody from an acquaintance to a friend. And then it takes about 200 hours to go from a friend to a close friendship. And in the last 3 years, that's definitely what I feel we've cultivated. And if I look at the woman that I am today versus the woman that I am 3 years ago, I know that the growth that I've experienced is because we've put in that time. We've put in those hours. We have been able to be vulnerable with each other. And we just don't get that from AI. What the research and the data is showing about AI is that it gives us this immediate sense that we can be vulnerable, that we can share. And so it feels very real to us. But actually, when we talk about true vulnerability, and I think a lot of people misunderstand vulnerability, I think a lot of people think that being vulnerable is sharing something sad or traumatic or horrible. And actually, vulnerability is just sharing something that risks rejection for you. And we can never really do that with AI because it isn't programmed to ever reject us. So every time we think we're being vulnerable, every time we think that we're peeling back a layer and we're processing with our, AI therapist or our AI friend, we're never really getting to the core of what it is that is helping us grow because we're never really truly being vulnerable. And there's so much data on this, and because I, again, think that I'm right quite a lot of the time, I've forgotten that I've made lots of notes here because I don't actually know AI. AI is not my area of expertise. But one of the things that it did tell us is that in these hours where we are cultivating deeper relationships, where we are cultivating deeper friendships, it's really that vulnerability piece that allows us the perception that we are growing. What we actually do after that is the bit that causes the growth. So when Nicola and I fall out and she comes to me and she says, I don't like that you did this, that is her being vulnerable. And when I say, actually, I think you're wrong, that is me kind of being vulnerable. But what we do after that is the bit that gives us the growth. And what we see in a lot of AI interactions is we feel like we're being vulnerable, but we can't ever truly be because there's no risk of rejection. And then what we do after that is quite limited and quite short in action and task because we've primarily just been validated in our viewpoint. And then probably one of the most important relationships to me is this one. This is my wonderful husband. And as these pie charts start to come up on the screen, you'll probably notice quite a bit about my temperament because, again, a big slice of this is me wanting to punch him in the face. I regularly spend quite a bit of my time trying not to punch people in the face. But we've been together for 21 years, and some of that we've been happily married for, as you can see. Most of it is us challenging each other. We have argued in our 21 years about everything you can imagine. And still to this day, when I want to punch him in the face the most, it's when, in fact, just tell me if anybody else has a partner that does this. You know when you open a fresh carton of milk? My husband has this habit where he takes the lid off and he peels that little foil circle bit and then he just pops it down on our side and then it becomes a pet that my home owns until I move it. And that by far makes up quite a large slice of this pie chart where I want to punch him in the face. But the reason that it's important and the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because we argue a lot. We argue a lot because, again, I think I'm right most of the time, right? There's a theme here, basically. I have to stop myself punching people in the face, and I usually have to stop myself doing that because I think I'm right about most things. This is a theme that you will get to know. But we have argued about everything and anything. And when I was looking at the research, when I was looking at the data and how we interact with AI from an emotional support perspective, what I realized really quickly was if AI had been around 15, 20 years ago, as mainstream as it is for us today, I don't think we'd have got to 21 years. Because I absolutely know that every single time this man pissed me off, I'd have gone to my AI and I'd have been like, am I wrong here? And of course my AI would have said, no, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. He's projecting his feelings. He's doing this, he's doing that. And so when I look at relationships standing the test of time, really, one of the things that came up in an AI forum that I was on is, do we think that the divorce rate will be higher, and do we think that relationships will have a much faster turnover now that people are turning to AI for things like therapy and companionship? And I thought it was a really great question, because I genuinely don't think I would be 21 years in with this man if I'd have had an AI every single day telling me, you're right and he's wrong, he's projecting, he needs to go away and process this, and all the time I'm just being told how glorious I am. And so when I started to break down the types of relationships that we have every day, from platonic relationships to romantic relationships, and then I started asking, what is the data showing on this? What the data was showing is that AI is really limiting our impact to navigate these relationships. And the biggest thing for me is that in psychology, there is a term, I'll come back to it, but basically it means that we are pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones. And romantic and platonic relationships are the two most intense relationships that really do push us out of our comfort zone. And so I very much, and anybody that knows me will vouch for this, if I wasn't married, and I always say if we ever do get divorced, I'm going to be one of those like fierce single women that just has loads of cats, and like I'll just be on my own and single forever because I'm like badass and all of those things. But actually, when we look at human-to-human connection, the biggest growth that we have as people is when we are in intensive relationships, because they force us out of our comfort zone. And we just don't get that with our AI. And then possibly the most interesting thing that I have found about AI as I have been studying how it impacts our human relationships is this one right here. So I have a 15-year-old, which is why there are no pictures of my children on here, because my teenage daughter, when she saw me making these slides, gave me a very firm warning that her face was not to be on anything. But one of the things that I am finding about parenting is that I tell my children no more than I tell them anything else. More than I tell them I love them, more than I tell them how great they are, I tell them no. Because again, when they're pushed outside of their comfort zones, they experience growth. But something strange has started to happen in my household the last 6 months is I will say no to my children. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do this. My daughter will go away and she'll come back about 20 minutes later and she'll say, Mummy, she's 15 and I still get called Mummy. And she'll say, Mummy, I've really thought about this, and actually I think that you're projecting some of your feelings onto this situation. And I'm like, oh, you've thought about this and they're your thoughts, are they? Tell me more. She'll be like, well, I think that we need to have an open discussion about what triggered you into not allowing me to have... And I'm like, okay. So that little wanting to punch them in the face bit comes into play, because then I'm like, okay, what did you put into your chat? What did you put into Claude or Character or whoever your little chatbot being is to get this response? And so what I'm finding is that the deepest relationships that we are having as humans are really being called into question, because we are losing a lot of the skills that it takes to maintain human connection and human relationships, because we're defaulting quickly and easily to, oh, I'm just going to tell my problems to my phone, and then this thing here is going to tell me all of the reasons that I'm right, 100% right, and validate me. And then what we end up with is real skill decay around being able to have conflict, around being able to communicate well. And so when I was looking at the worst relationship that I have that doesn't cause me growth, it was this one, because this one tells me that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I love this one. And when we talk about the things that really impact us every day, and when we talk about the things that really give us that growth, we feel like we're getting it here. We feel like we are speaking to this thing that gets us, that understands us. And I speak to hundreds of women every week who will say things to me like, I had a better conversation with AI last night than I did with my husband. And I speak to women who come to me and say, my friend and I have had a fallout and she's the problem because I put our argument into ChatGPT and here's what it said. Or I'm having an issue with a supplier. They sent me this email and I didn't know how to reply, so I put it into chat and I was like, craft me an email that makes me sound professional and authoritative. And then we send it back and the person receiving it is like, this. Because all of a sudden, these connections and these relationships that we have that are relational, that are human to human, the minute that they go wrong, we're losing the skill to be able to handle that. We're reverting to chat, and then the person on the other end suddenly feels like they've been called into a HR meeting. And I've done this numerous times, and Nicola won't mind me sharing this. Nicola's terrible at conflict. She's awful, and sometimes I piss her off. And Nicola's favourite thing to do is have a glass of red wine and then tell me all the things that I've done wrong. And that's fine because that's how she communicates. And we've learned that about each other. We've learned how to have that conflict for growth. But what happens in those moments where we're not having that conflict, where we're not having that communication, is I know sometimes that I'll say something to Nicola that might just activate her in a certain way, and she wants to say something but isn't sure how. So I know she puts it into her little chat GPT and then she edits it and then sends it back to me, and I read it, and all of a sudden it's like I've got this friendship that's amazing and it's wonderful. And now I feel like I'm speaking to a HR professional who's just been like, right, Cally, you said this at 12:03 and this is how I felt. And so we're really starting to lose the ability to critically think. And that really impacts our friendships and our relationships because it alters our communication and it alters how we are able to deal with conflict. And so when I was looking at what are the things that we really need to maintain good, healthy human-to-human relationships, it comes down to these 4 things. Growth requires us to feel a bit uncomfortable. And if you've ever had, in fact, just give me a show of hands, anyone that's had a friendship or a relationship with a sibling or a partner, you absolutely, utterly adore them, but sometimes want to punch them in the face, right? And we've either got some liars in this room or some people that don't manage their feelings, right? Because at some point, people that we love trigger us. But in that moment where we're triggered or they're triggered and we want to punch them in the face, that uncomfortableness causes the growth. That's the bit that shifts who we are as a person, and we do something different next time. I now know that there's certain things I do that Nicola doesn't like, that my husband doesn't like, that my children don't like, and so the next time they come up, I'm like, okay, how do I handle this differently? I don't think, well, I was right, chat told me I was right, therefore I can just keep doing these things. And then when we look at real intimacy, and real intimacy again goes down to it's the risk of rejection. It's not sharing a sad story. It's not bonding over our trauma. It's about how do we put ourselves out there and risk rejection. And you can only really do that with another human person. When I come out here, and a lot of people often laugh at me for this, but when I come out here and I say, hey, I'm kind of a big deal, most people will be like, the hell? That's the most vulnerable that I can be with you because that's the thing that you will reject me for the most. But doing that over and over again is what causes that intimacy between us. It's why you sit and listen, or it's why you don't and you get up and walk off. But that intimacy is because you have sat here and you can see I'm just being as vulnerable as I can be. I'm sharing with you and you're accepting it or you're not. But that real intimacy is what causes the connection. And then we've got investment. and relationships that make you better. So a real investment in a relationship, especially a platonic one, takes anything from 38 to 200 hours. But the ones that you do invest in really should make you better. And when we look at the fact that 93 minutes a day on average is being spent having conversations with our AI, and that's globally, like the stats on this were astounding when I was looking into it. 93 to I think it was like 107, 93 to 107 minutes on average a day are spent with somebody having a normal conversation with their AI. Not sending it on a productivity task or getting it to create something, but having a conversation like, hey, here's what I'm doing today. Like, here's like an hour and a half we're doing that for, and yet can anybody tell me the last time they actually spent an hour and a half every day speaking to their friend? We're really losing this ability. And when I came in here this morning, like we were walking down here, and still the amount of people that I was like, hello, 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 and they were like, oh, okay, hello, there's people here. And I don't think we realise the impact that it has when we open our phone in the morning, and now we're opening it and we're seeing AI. It's really stopping that ability for us to connect in deeply vulnerable ways that build over time. And so, things that I'm seeing at the moment that I think really are impacting our ability to connect, and if you are somebody that is building a brand and you're using social media, you might have seen quite a lot of this. So I've asked, like, self-generic formulas, a bit shady of me, and I'm sorry to anybody that's done this trend, but my entire Facebook feed at the minute is full of people saying, I asked ChatGPT, what are things that my audience don't know about me that I should share more? And hundreds of people are sharing it. Now, I don't want to be like, the Facebook police. Your Facebook's your Facebook. Use it for whatever. But it's not like we're going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, here's my last 7 posts. Tell me where I've been an absolute dick. Like, we're not doing that level of critical analysis. We're literally saying, validate me, validate me, validate me more. And so we're not getting that growth from it. And then the other biggest thing that I'm seeing at the moment is I told ChatGPT about an argument between this person and this person, and here's all of the reasons that I'm right. And Chat will validate that, right? Because it will come back and it will say to you, here's 5 ways that they did this wrong, or here's 5 ways that you did this right, and here's 5 more things that you can do differently. And then we've got this bit where, and I've seen it pop up, and I'm sure it will be really helpful for some people, but we've got these things where people are now creating like agentic AI, right? These agents that you can interact with. So if you can't afford to work with that person one-to-one, here's their AI that you can work with. And all I keep thinking about this is a risky one actually. Just give me a little wave if you're a Swiftie. Oh, that's really I knew I liked you. So, I'm a huge Swiftie, like I love Taylor Swift, and all I keep thinking is, if somebody said to me, you can have a conversation with Taylor Swift's chatbot, I'd be like, what do I get from that? Like, where does that work? And so again, when we're looking at this communication of we want to interact with people, and there's a barrier to interact with this person, and that barrier is now getting bigger because they're creating AI versions of themselves for you to deal with. All we're doing is creating a bigger gap between having human-to-human connection. And so one of the things that really helps me to make sure that I am making the most of my AI and I'm getting my AI to work for me and not the other way around, because I use AI like everybody else does, is my husband is a little bit older than me. He was around way before Google was. And so there's a term in my house that he uses all the time when we can't find the answer to something, and I'll lazily say to my kids, Google it. And he always says, what did you do before Google? And I always say, I don't know, I wasn't born then. But he was, and he had to figure it out. And this question came into play last night because we were at the hotel and we were doing a team building exercise. We had to go on like a scavenger hunt. And when you got to the point, we had to answer these general knowledge questions. And I cannot tell you the amount of times, I hope she's not here, I'm about to call her out, but I can't tell you the amount of times that Claire was like, chat, tell me the answer to this. And so in real time, we can see that we're not using the skills that we've got to be building the knowledge that we need to be able to then hold conversations, connection, and so on as we move forward. And so before I finish on my little challenge for you around what we need to do, I just wanted to ask you, has anybody heard the Cookie Thief poem? Does anybody know this poem? I'll tell you really quickly. There's a poem called The Cookie Thief, and it's about a woman in an airport who's waiting to get an aeroplane, and in the waiting lounge she grabs a book and a bag of cookies, and she goes and sits down and she starts reading her book, and as she's flicking through the pages and she's reading, she notices that the person across from her puts their hand in the cookie bag and starts eating the cookies. And so she puts her hand in the cookie bag and also takes a cookie. And they have this kind of standoff over who's getting the cookies. And every time they take a cookie, she takes a cookie. And this resentment starts to build inside her that these are my cookies, what the hell are you doing? And eventually, when there's only one cookie left in the bag, the person kind of awkwardly giggles, takes the cookie, breaks it in half and offers her half of the cookie. And she snatches it and takes it and eats it and thinks, cookies, I'm taking these. And then the announcement for her plane is called, and she goes and boards, and she puts her bags down and she sits down and she reaches into the carrier bag to get her book out, and she finds her bag of cookies. And I once went to a seminar where they told this Cookie Thief poem, and the point of it was how it was supposed to be really profound, that this other person who was a stranger had really connected here by sharing these cookies. And all I kept thinking was, that is not profound. That is an example of how women don't speak up. That is an example of how women think that they need to share their cookies. That is an example of how many times women are sat there thinking, I really should say something, but I don't know how to. And so we feel like we're being screwed over by the cookie. And for me, as somebody who works very specifically with women in the field of psychology, all I keep thinking about when I was researching the AI was women already start from this place of not really speaking up and communicating. We all already start from this place of feeling like, should I say something even when I know I should, but what do I say and how do I say it? And so AI can feel like a really powerful tool for women because it gives us a voice that we haven't otherwise been able to articulate. But the long run of this is it really stops us from having those meaningful connections that build the vulnerability, that create the trust, that really shift us into being the incredible humans that we have the power to be when we learn how to connect at a deeper level. And so my challenge for you today is just to go and invest some time. We've got all of these people here. I'm sure you have lots of appointments, lots of meetings. You're going to go and meet people. And I would just really challenge you to have a really honest, open, and vulnerable conversation. Thank you so much.
So much, Cally. That's brilliant. Conscious you've got time and you need to go and do work and things like that, so I'll let you go, but just to say a massive thank you for Cally. I hope you've got the tone now of what we're trying to do, and that's a really good way of getting to the tone. But we're going to take a little bit of a break now. Let's say just after 10:30 is our next session, which is the town hall one. But until then, thanks so much, Cally, and have a really good show and get out there and do some work.